to the Devy Delight, brought to you by ExpandTheBoxScore.com, with your hosts Ricky Valero and Chris Stoops, bringing you all the guys who should be on your fantasy radar this season and leading into your upcoming rookie draft.
Welcome to another edition of the Devy Delight, brought to you by ExpandTheBoxScore.com. As we prepare to send off the 2020 class and head into the 2021 class, we want to give you our last set of rankings before we do so, and we're going to do that with the quarterbacks today. As always, I am joined by my partner in crime, Stoops. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Had a long day at work. Same amount of hours, but, one of those busy days. So excited to take a step back and talk some QB rankings. I know that in one of our chats, it wasn't quarterback related, but we kind of went back and forth, or at least I did more so, went back and forth on some other prospects and where we have them ranked. So definitely excited to get our final, QB rankings out there for the 2020 class and see what kind of, basically stir the pot a little bit, see where we can get some disagreements on.
For sure. And the idea with this, guys, is what we're going to do is we're going to release our 10 through 6 rankings for Stoops and I. We're going to talk about a guy or two that we like within that category right there of the 10 through 6. And then we're going to reveal our 5 through 1. And then once we do that, we're going to talk about the guys we like there. And then we're going to release our tiers of where we think these guys at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, if need be. But that's kind of the goal of the episode. I'm really excited. Everybody that listens to the show knows how much I love quarterbacks. So let's go ahead and start talking these quarterbacks. All right, Steve, go ahead and kick us off with your 10 through 6 QB rankings.
Yeah, so starting off number 10, I've got Cole McDonald out of Hawaii. Number 9, I've got Nate Stanley. Number 8, I've got your boy Anthony Gordon. Do still like him a lot, but there was some stuff that came about at the Senior Bowl, good and bad. So hopefully we can move him up, maybe a rehashed later on. But nonetheless, I've got Anthony Gordon at sitting number 8 right now. Number 7, I've got your other boy Jalen Hurts, and number 6, I've got Jake Fromm, who, if y'all remember when we first released, very very first, I had him as my QB1 overall. So I've got Jake Fromm sitting at number 6.
So coming in at number 10 for me, I've got Nate Stanley. He's one guy I really still do like. I still think it is insanely weird that this guy wasn't invited to the Senior Bowl. I still don't know that. And going back now, it's kind of a question I wish maybe I would have asked then. Number 9, I've got Steve Montez. He was very hit and miss. He's a wild card in this draft. I think he could either be a decent backup in this league for the next 5 to 10 years, or he could be a quarterback in the XFL in the next year. Coming in at number 8 is a quarterback I do not like, no matter what Stoops says. Jalen Hurts. He's slotted at number 8. Number 7, I actually have Jake Fromm, which is kind of funny. He had him as high as 1. I had him as high as 3, dating back to August. So that's insane to kind of watch him fall. And then, of course, number 6, I've got Anthony Gordon. He's one of the guys that I was literally just talking to Stoops about off the air, about somebody that's slowly but surely rising up my rankings, and did so with his performance in that Senior Bowl game. Stoops, out of these guys, pick one that you like, but you kind of want to talk about a little bit about.
Yeah, so the one that I do want to touch base on is Jake Fromm himself. So you look at his numbers overall, they're not eye-popping. And even if you watch the film, he rarely does anything that just kind of stands out. I mean, you watch, for example, and I'm not comparing the two per se, but you watch like a Trevor Lawrence, and you asked me to make a cut up for like an article that you were making, and watching some of those that game film, it's just kind of like, man, he made that pass. How do you do that? Jake Fromm doesn't necessarily do that. He does have some good deep passes and some good, ball placement with it. So he's still a guy I do like a lot. It's just with the performance that we saw from him this entire season, that's why I've dropped him down to that 6th spot. So still very excited about him. He's still, obviously, he hasn't shrunk or anything. He's still got some decent size to him, 6'2", sitting at 225 as well. So got some good weight, could take some hits if need be. but sitting at 2,610 passing yards, 22 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Having the lower interception total is definitely something that I like to see. So I'm still a fan of Jake Fromm. I like what I've seen as a collective whole, but not necessarily liked it enough to obviously keep him as the QB1 or even inside the top 5. So definitely someone I will be keeping a very, very close eye on through this offseason, going into obviously pro days. And then I'd have to think he'll be at the combine. I think he's one that's obviously going to get the invite there. We know that some have kind of been left out previous years that maybe should have made it. But I would have to assume Jake Fromm will be there. The quarterback class is, normally not a super deep, as far as total, prospects, I should say. So sure, he'll be there. Definitely want to see what we see through this off season. Hopefully he can start to answer some questions that a lot of people, including myself, do still have. Would love to see him. He just doesn't throw the ball. You look at Georgia's offense. I mean, yeah, he had 354 passing attempts. That's not necessarily a small number, but it's just the way that the Georgia offense is ran. He wasn't necessarily, I don't think, able to showcase his full potential. So just hard to get in a rhythm, obviously, whenever you run a different type of scheme like what Georgia does. But he's the one that I like to talk about, and see what we've got going through the offseason for him. Who do you got? Who do you want to talk about?
Obviously, the guy I want to talk about the most is Anthony Gordon. This is one guy that I like a whole lot, and I wrote in my article a lot of what I like about him and why I think that he continuously rises up my draft rankings. If you just kind of the few things that pop off, he was number 1 in the country in pass completions, number 1 in the country for pass attempts. He was 4th in pass completion percentage, completing 71% of his passes. Now think about this for just a second. He threw the ball 689 times last year, and he completed 71% of his passes. That to me is one of those things that is really awesome. He threw for 5,579 yards, which was only second to Joe Burrow. His adjusted passing yards per attempt, he was 6th in the Pac-10 for 8.4 yards. He had 48 touchdown passes, which was second to only Joe Burrow. His passing efficiency rating was 157, which was good for in the top 5 of the country. I mean, he had a lot of statistics that popped off. Now, a lot of people will say, all right, was it because of Mike Leach? And you're right, a lot of it was. But the thing that stood out to me the most about Anthony Gordon is when we had the conversation with him. Mike Leach, yes, it is a very much just chuck the ball style of offense. But at the same time, he broke down the reads of what Mike Leach wants from them. You know what I mean? It's not always first read. It's the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth read. And it's about playmaking. And I think that's the big thing that stood out at the Senior Bowl was his ability. It's a weird motion. I can't even explain it to you because even the touch, I've even rewatched it a couple times. But the touchdown from Gordon to Gandy Golden, I don't know how he made that throw. I legitimately, it was a very awkward, very off-kilter throw that he made that obviously Gandy Golden ran the great route there, but the ball was there, the ball was caught, and the reason it was is because he made a fantastic throw. And that's the kind of thing that I think that he brings to the table. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but he is actually pretty decently athletic. He's a natural leader. I think he's got some pretty good accuracy on his deep ball. His ball placement is very nice. And like I said, the big problem obviously with him is he a system type of player? What is he only going to succeed in a Mike Leach style offense, which is a very much high consistently thrown the ball. I've said my most ideal fit for this guy is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think Bruce Arians would just be enamored to have Anthony Gordon as his quarterback. And I think there's a lot of teams that would. But Anthony Gordon will only be successful if he goes to the right offense. And that, of course, is one of the big knocks on Gordon. But Anthony Gordon was a guy that wasn't even on my radar at the beginning of the season. I will be interested to see if KJ Costello actually does transfer over to Mississippi State, right? Mississippi State? Mm-hmm. And Mike Leach, and see if he can kind of transform Costello to be a top-flight quarterback next year. It's nothing official, but it's being talked about for sure, and I think that would be great for his stock. But even with the 1 year, I love me some Anthony Gordon. I think that his natural leadership and his competitiveness and his quick learning really will benefit come combine, pro day, et cetera, Stoops.
No, I completely agree with you. He's definitely someone that as you said, he wasn't even on my my radar come start of the season. But definitely after seeing him throughout the season, and also definitely at the Senior Bowl, and even getting to talk with him, like we said on previous episodes, when you get to talk to the guys, you get a better feel of what's kind of going on in their head and their poise, I guess you could say, whenever they're asked hundreds upon hundreds of questions from different people and they're trying to get pulled different ways, and he was just accepting and willing to all of it. So definitely someone that I'm excited to keep an eye on throughout this off season as well.
All right, Stoops, give me your 5 through 1 now.
All right, sitting at number 5. This was a guy that really did start to rise up my boards. Someone who I'm still, skeptical about, but Jordan Love. I got him sitting at number 5. I definitely didn't have him anywhere near number 5 last time we released our rankings. Number 4, this one will be very controversial with many people. I've got Tua sitting at number 4. Number 3, I've got Jacob Eason, and number 2 sitting, I've got Joe Burrow. Just kidding. I've got Justin Herbert sitting at number 2, and number 1, of course, Joe Burrow. That's a clear cut, far and away number 1 QB rankings for me. So who do you got?
All right, ours is just a little bit slightly different. I've got Jordan Love at 5 as well. He's another one that creeped up my draft board, and I think I've got a little bit more to say about him, but I'll say it a little bit later, I think, when we're talking about the tiers. Number 4, I've got Jacob Eason. I did what you did at first, and I've tossed and turned about it. I like Jacob Eason. I like Jacob Eason a whole lot, and I'm still not sure that I couldn't change these two hand in hand. I'm not a big Tua guy, but I went 2 with 3, and then of course I went Herbert 2, and then of course you got the king on the top. So for me, it's to me personally, there's you've got your nonchalant guys, you got your head guys, and then you've got some guys that are just a lot of question marks. And who in this top 5 did you want to talk about, Stoops?
Yeah, so the guy that I want to touch base on is Jacob Eason. I did essentially what you were doing with Jacob Eason and Tua. It was kind of like that. How do I want to put it? But I just like Jacob a little bit more. And against the ranked opponents that he played this year, he had 4 games against ranked opponents, one being a bowl game. In those 4 games combined, he went basically 90 of 139, 64.7 completion percentage, 995 passing yards, 8 passing touchdowns with only 1 interception. And again, the whole college rushing aspect, he had 15 rushing attempts for negative 39 yards. So basically he got sacked a whole lot is really what ended up happening there. But still having the 8 touchdowns to 1 interception against those ranked opponents. And the worst game that he had was against USC. He went 16 of 26, 61.5 completion, only had 180 passing yards, no touchdowns or interceptions. But then you look at whenever he played Utah, number 9 ranked at the time, he threw the ball 51 times. He did only complete 56.9%, so that's definitely something you want to see, increase. But when you throw the ball 51 times, you're bound to have some arid throws here and there. But he threw for 316 yards, 4 touchdowns, and that is where that 1 interception came about. So I just, what you see against ranked opponents, that's to me a big proponent on what you can or cannot do. So even though he didn't have a whole lot of passing yards against USC per se, he didn't throw any interceptions, which is obviously a huge thing. So definitely loved seeing that. And then even whenever you go down a little bit further and you look at the down and distance performance on the website, on expandtheboxscore.com, first and 10 plus, he completed 65% of his passes for 1,305 yards, and he had 10 passing touchdowns on first and 10 plus, and 39 first downs. So as you've seen, through your skill positions as well, even at the quarterback position here with Jacob Eason, he's getting it done on first down, which is definitely something you love to see. So he's a guy that obviously he kind of took a step back, I'd have to say, whenever he basically got essentially, he got injured, so that kind of played a factor into it. But whenever Jake Fromm took over that starting job down in Georgia, he transferred out, then went to Washington. Once Jacob Eason got back onto the field, it was almost like he didn't even miss a beat, to be honest with you. From a lot of the film that I've watched, I have really, really enjoyed and really liked what I saw from him, and think he can definitely translate to the next level. So I'm excited what that has in store. But when I went through and looked at the ranked opponents, that was kind of my biggest thing that I wanted to see. He's got some other good games throughout the season, but to me, against those top 25 opponents, that's where it'll really start to show what you are capable of doing. Because obviously when you get to the next level, even the worst of the worst at the next level is essentially going to be better than kind of what you're facing essentially week in and week out. He is in a stronger conference where there are some top-notch, caliber players going through there. But still, nonetheless, seeing what you do against top 25 is a big thing for me.
Yeah, I love me some Jacob Eason, and it's kind of crazy to me, and this is not necessarily a knock on Jordan Love, but it's kind of a knock on Jordan Love. When I look at my big board and I look at the guys that I have ranked, I just don't see how anybody can rank Love above Eason, Tua, or Herbert, or even even Burrow, obviously. But it kind of makes me think like crazy things, because to be honest with you, like Eason has a gun of an arm. Like he has a cannon of an arm. Sometimes too his deficiencies. One of the big things that I think that I love about Eason the most, and what people are going to fall in love with this kid about, is going to be, his ability to take the snap under center or even in shotgun. He's making him immediately adaptable to any system in the NFL. So I think that's going to be one guy. I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be taken in the first round, that somebody's going to trade back into the first round just to get that fifth year on. Kind of like ideally fits. Maybe if Carolina creep back into the first round, or Oakland, or even a Tampa Bay or something like that, kind of jump back into the first round, because a lot of teams like that fifth year option with a quarterback. You know what I mean? They're willing to kind of dive back into a round just to get that fifth year option, because if you don't have that fifth year option, then you got to franchise after the fourth year if you do end up with a stud of a quarterback. And the guy that I want to talk about in this tier is, I could not believe this when I saw this, when I was doing some research, but Colin Cowherd, who he called Justin Herbert the most overlooked quarterback in the 2020 NFL draft. I don't know how I feel about this, because
he said he's the most overlooked?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't know that was humanly possible for a guy that's consistently ranked number 2 or number 3 in a majority of the rankings. Now, if you're saying because of Joe Burrow he's being overlooked, then I guess you could. Because honestly, we've talked about this 1,000 times. Justin Herbert is clear-cut probably the best raw prospect available in this draft, ahead of even Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's coming off one of the statistically greatest college football seasons of all time. So that's the big difference. The big thing about Justin Herbert for me is this. He improved year over year massively in a few things that you want him to, improve upon. He played in 14 games this year. He raised his completion percentage a little over 7 points, which is something that a lot of people criticized him for in his junior season, where he only had a 59.4 complete completion percentage. And then, of course, he raised his touchdown to interception ratio as well. He had 404 attempts in 2018, had 8 interceptions, which still isn't a lot, guys. But in 2019, he had 428, and he only had 6 interceptions. To me, that was a big stepping stone as well. The one thing that shows to me is his ability to adapt and try to get better. He's the most raw prospect he's got 4 years of starting, 8+ games in his career. So he's got the background of playing in consistent games over a year. The Pac-12 isn't necessarily the SEC, but it's not exactly easy year in, year out. A couple notable other things that, kind of touching on the fantasy-wise as well, is he does run for some touchdowns. He did, he ran for 4 last year. He had 13 total in his career. So even if you're getting a 3 to 4 touchdown rushes a year from him, you're going to benefit from those throughout the fantasy season as well. But for me, I love Herbert. We've talked about him 1,000 times on this show, and we talked about how much we like the guy. And he only, in my opinion, solidified that he is 1A, 1B with Joe Burrow, as far as, in my opinion, as far as it goes when it comes to the quarterbacks in this draft, because Justin Herbert is good at football, and he's 6'6", 237 pounds. He's soft-spoken. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's a leader, and he is going to take a team to the next level here on Sundays in the very near future, Jacob. I mean, Stoops, sorry.
We're gonna just change my name altogether to something totally different. No,
Yeah.
I agree with you though. I mean, what we saw, we talk about it in a lot of my, I don't want to call them debates, but my discussions, about certain players. I always refer back to the Senior Bowl, and again, yes, it's practice. Yes, it's there's more to it than just the practice, because obviously off the field stuff as well. But what I saw in person, on the field and off the field from Herbert it's what you want to see out of a prospect, honestly. Like you said, he has a great head on his shoulders. Watching him run down the field 40 yards just to give his guy a high five or a pick me up if it was an overthrow on his end saying, hey, my bad, I'll get you next time. Whatever it was, it doesn't matter. The fact that he's running down the field just speaks volumes for his leadership. And I can't wait to see where he gets drafted. If he gets the right landing spot, there's a couple spots out there for really a lot of quarterbacks to land. And if they get there, oh my goodness, they're going to skyrocket up these fantasy boards. Obviously in a super flex format, he's essentially already a projected first round rookie pick. But man, if he goes to the right spot, it's going to be interesting to see where some people take him. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for him and through this process.
I agree 100%. All right, Steve, so we kind of decided, and this is going to play a big part in when we do our running back and wide receiver rankings, breaking down these guys in tiers. So we decided we wanted to do it with all positions. So go ahead and kick us off with your tiers. Just you can give them all to me, 4, 3, 2. I know you said you have 4, I have 3. So go ahead and give me all the guys you have in your tiers.
Okay, yeah. So I've got 4 tiers here. So sitting in tier 4, I'll start there and kind of work my way back. Tier 4, I've got Nate Stanley, Cole McDonald, Shea Patterson, Steven Montez, and Mason Fine. I like some things out of all those guys, but again, they are towards the bottom of my rankings there. So that's my tier 4. Tier 3, Jordan Love, Jake Fromm, Jalen Hurts, and Anthony Gordon. I know you're not going to like that Anthony Gordon one, but that's where I've got him. Tier 2, again, this is that I've got Jacob Eason and Tua. That's kind of where I was saying, like, interchangeable, whether they're 3, 4, to me, they're at the same level. Like I said, I got them in the same tier. So that's where we're at. And then tier 1, obviously, I've got Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. So that's how my tiers are laying out right now.
Okay, so for me personally, what I did with mine, I didn't even bother ranking the other guys in tiers because I don't think they have anything to bring to the table fantasy-wise. And I know that's kind of harsh, but it's just how I feel about it. So in tier 3, I actually have Anthony Gordon and Jake Fromm. In tier 2, I have Jacob Eason and Jordan Love. And then tier 1, I have Burrow, Herbert, and Tua. Basically, I didn't go another tier only because I don't feel like the rest of the guys are going to have any fantasy relevance. And yes, that includes Jalen Hurts. So whatever y'all want to say it. I don't really care. But for me, obviously, I teased in my head, I kind of teased the idea of having Eason in tier 1 or dropping Tua from tier 1 to tier 2. I think the only reason I have Tua in tier 1 because of how high he's going to be drafted. I think he's going to play. He might not play next year per se or not play the first half of next year, but he's going to be drafted high enough where he's going to have value. You know what I mean? He's going to play. You're going to watch him. Jacob Eason, I think, will play as well, but I don't know how soon. Versus Tua, you kind of know how high he's going to be. He's going to be picked in the top 10. You know what I mean? It's going to happen. Probably top 5 maybe. But I feel like you're going to see a lot of Tua because of whoever drafts him is going to play him because of his value. And that's the reason why I snuck him into tier 1 and kind of left Eason and Love in that tier 2. And I do love Gordon and I do love Fromm. But obviously, when you're doing this, I do have Gordon higher than a lot of other people do in my rankings because I think he's got the ability. But when we're kind of breaking down these tiers, it's kind of thinking, all right, this is actual reality. You know what I mean? What can we expect of these guys on the next level? And where do we expect you guys to have them on your radar heading into your future drafts? And what tiers should those guys be in? And that's the kind of mind frame I went into it with Stoops.
Yeah. So for me, the reason that I have Tua in that tier 2, so basically what you're saying is 100% what my mindset was at as far as he's going to get drafted earlier. So I definitely understand having him in the tier 1. Reason I dropped him down to the tier 2 is simply for the fact basically even with Jacob Eason, I think they are going to be sitting. And the reason I think Tua is sitting is the injury, not necessarily because he can't be a viable starter right off the get-go. It's just simply the fact that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he, does heal a lot quicker and he's able to get in much sooner than what I think. I just haven't seen much, feedback on the actual time frame as far as what they did say he's going to be throwing at the combine, if I remember seeing that correctly. So that's a big step for sure. But that's why I dropped him down. But kind of like what he said. So for me, the tier ones, those are guys I think can go to an organization right now, be a starter, albeit they may not be a, MVP per se caliber or even rookie of the year type quarterback. But I think they can jump in and be a starter right now, day one type thing. Tier two, I think, again, kind of sit back, learn the schemes, learn from a vet, and just kind of move on that route. Or, again, heal up from injuries. And then tier three is one of those going to the right fit, going to a right scheme and learning that. And, again, same concept as two. Sit for a little while, learn the game, just learn the pace of it. And then I think from there you'll be able to go on. And tier four, kind of what you just didn't rank them at all. Tier four is that, hey, I'm not really going to touch you in fantasy. I don't think you're going to have much of a role at an NFL organization as far as, especially being fantasy viable. So you kind of just left them out, which essentially is what my mindset was, but I still put them in a tier. So that's kind of the route I went with it all. So that's what my mindset was.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. I mean, you're right. I mean, I kind of just didn't think those guys have fantasy relevance, and I still don't. And no offense to the Jalen Hurts fan club, but I still don't think that he's going to have any fantasy relevance because I don't think he's really good at football. But folks, do us a favor. Head on over to expandtheboxscore.com. Check out the tool. Use promo code Stoops to get the 10% off the database. Also, head on over to Twitter. Give us a follow. Give Stoops a follow at Stoops1990. Give myself a follow at Ricky Valera _. And then give the show a follow at the Devy Delight. And until next time, we'll talk to you guys later.
See y'all later.